I am mining investor and editor of Resource Stock Digest, Gerardo Del Real, here with my partner, Mr. Nick Hodge, who also happens to be an investor and happens to be the publisher of Daily Profit Cycle. This is the 214th episode of our weekly therapy session that we call Investing in Bizarro World. We'll talk gold, we'll talk bull markets, we'll talk the overall markets, we'll talk bonds, the correlation to gold. A lot going on around the world and here at home. Mr. Nick Hodge, as always, first and foremost, how are you today?
Doing great, Gerardo. Feeling good about gold. Feeling good about things in general. I've gotten some things right and are anxious to see things play out over the summer. How are you?
I am excellent. Gold is a great place to start. I know that the bulls of the world, the Jimmy Cramers of the world are cheering today's inflation report. We'll talk about that here in a bit. But gold is the main event right now, right? It looks like we have the breakout that we've been hoping for. We talked some technical levels last week. Let's leave that last week and get to this week's new levels. I'd love to get your take on everything gold, sir.
Well, they're cheering the inflation numbers, which they think is gonna, make the Fed stop hiking because inflation is coming down. But what they aren't thinking is that inflation is coming down because, prices are slowing and recession is coming. It's the reason copper's been down for the past 3 months and oil's been down for the past 3 months. And oil is one of the biggest inputs there. So that's part of the reason gold has done well. People are starting to factor in this recession more so than the inflation, right? Inflation was last year's bogeyman, and frankly, they all got that wrong too. Remember, it was all transitory for a long ass time, and now they're happy that it's coming down, but they got their eye off the ball. The ball is the recession that's coming down the plate here in the next quarter or so. Interest rates, you mentioned, the 10-year continues to soften dramatically. It's what's allowed gold to start going up. I think we probably talked about it last week that the 10-year started falling off in October. That's when gold started going up, and it continues to be weak. And then there's a flight to safety from banks. I think the second week or the third week of March saw the second largest outflows from banks, 120 billion or something, if memory serves. And that money's not all going back into other banks and into brokerages. It's going elsewhere. Clearly, I mean, Bitcoin's up 50% in a month or something like that.
Yep.
And gold is obviously above 2,000, so looking very strong. So the thing that gets me is a couple of things. You get people arguing about Bitcoin and gold, which I've never understood. Why can't you just own both and be glad to have something that's outside of the system and outside of the dollars and in that sphere of influence, et cetera. And the other thing is still like the when moon people, right? Like, why does gold have to go to 3,000 or 4,000? Like, why can't it just hang out just north of 2,000, which is a very robust price for lots of miners, and will eventually light a fire underneath the explorers and developers as well. So those are my thoughts. What are your thoughts on gold?
No, I agree with everything you said. I did want to ask you about the next technical breakout that we want to see. We had talked before about 1974, went through that beautifully. Then we had talked 2020. Look, we touched 2045 today being Thursday, April the 13th. Closed right around the 2037 level. 2037 is a robust gold price. I think it heads higher. What's that technical breakout that you need to see to push towards new all-time highs?
It's the previous all-time high.
Yeah.
It needs to capture the flag. I mean, and hold it in its own court for a little bit. So what is that? 2069, 2070, I believe it is. And so I'll stop looking at the chart, but that's what it is. And it's got to hold there convincingly. And that's what I say. It doesn't grow right to the sky. You can still see a bit of a range there, but nonetheless, the gold stocks are getting bullish. The GDX, the GDXJ are looking very strong. I'm up pretty well now on that position and on GLD. So we'll see if the bonds continue to break down. That's what's wagging the dog here.
Well, the correlation is still very, very close to 1-to-1, right? We've talked about the correlation between the 10-year and the gold price. Obviously, that's going to continue if gold is going to continue to surge. Accurate?
100%, yeah.
Excellent. Follow-up question, silver. Silver's now acting like a precious metal and not the industrial metal that it's been acting as, right? I think that's important to flag, because if that is the case, then a run towards 30 finally doesn't seem doesn't seem impossible, right? It wasn't going to happen as long as it was viewed as the industrial metal it is. If we are in a recession and the data is going to tell us that in another quarter or two, then it looks like silver's breakout moment is here. Do you agree with that?
I have a silver recommendation coming out in the next issue of Foundational Profits.
So, yeah, so bullish on silver, clearly.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, and exactly for the reason you said, acting like a precious metal now, and will eventually overshoot because that's what silver does when gold moves higher. And so, time to get positioned. A bit of FOMO. Hopefully, I didn't wait too long. The price I put on the stock that I'm recommending, it's already above by 50 cents or 75 cents or so. But again, buy them on red days, right? So just wait a couple of days. And that's another thing worth mentioning. The sentiment has been going back and forth on almost a daily basis, right? Like, today we're giddy because inflation is softening, but the S&P closed down, I think, 2 other days this week. So sentiment is all over the place. Meanwhile, volatility remains suppressed. So I would look for that to perk back up here as well.
It's worth noting that we still have more inflation. It's just less than what we anticipated. I want to just point that out to everybody because everybody's fucking running around as if inflation has been cooled and it's actually receding. It's not. It's just less than they thought they would see, given how bad they missed it. By they, I mean the Fed.
It's still more than twice their target, right? It's funny. I went downstairs and flipped on the TV while I was eating lunch today, and the anchors are all excited because stocks are up, right? They're like, "Wow, Weight Watchers is up 60% this week, and Microsoft is catching a bit, and this and that." And then the next segment starts, because they have segments on Bloomberg or whatever. The next segment is bond issuers are worried because defaults are on the rise. It's like, wait, what? Like, we're giddy about stocks today? Like, anyway, it's a very short-term mentality.
It's easier to sell narratives than it is to sell facts and numbers, right? Let's stick with facts and numbers. Crypto. I'm not a crypto guy. Still don't own any. I know you have some Bitcoin. We have Chris Curl, our local in-house crypto expert. I mean, this breakout over 30,000 caught me by surprise. Again, I'm just a speculator on the sideline. I don't have a dog in the race, but
honestly, me as well. We should have him on to talk about it. We'll see if it holds above 30,000. It doesn't seem to want to get much above that. 30,300 or so. Would be the top end of the range there. I was surprised how fast it went up as well. You've got FTX talking about like reopening. They've found $7 billion or something. But nonetheless, and I guess it's, partially broken that correlation that it was having with the broader markets, but it looks pretty good. But to me, I'm not 100% convinced yet like I am with the precious metals.
Okay, so definitely precious metals bullish, not so much so on the crypto side. I want to segue right into it, and there's no real good segue for this, but we were talking a bit off air and about time, and you have some milestones coming up personally for yourself. I have some coming up, but Mr. Dines, right? We got to mention it's been a year since his passing, and obviously he was somebody that was a mentor to our mentor and a giant in the industry. Any thoughts there on Mr. Dines? My favorite quote from him probably is "Believe the unbelievable." And anytime I see a precious metals bull market or a rare earth bull market, like it looks like we may have here soon, depending on some geopolitical factors and some licensing issues with some of the bigger refiners in the world. But anytime I see either of those markets starting to really attract investor and speculator attention, I think of Mr. Dines because he was such a champion for those types of markets.
Well, and you think about the inflation and how the Fed has got that wrong and how they've continued to hike into a slowdown and how everyone's, giddy over, Fed watching. And I was thinking yesterday, which was the anniversary of his passing on April 12th, how he would have been writing about it. I went back and read the last 2 issues of the Dines letter, March and April of 2022, and took some quotes from there to put in my monthly issue this month. But yeah, it's amazing how fast, time goes. And I think I was writing that, we're all worse off for not having him around. He made us all better investors, I feel like. And, there's a couple of thousand folks that were, getting advice from him through the Dines letter, through Interim Warning Bulletin, and they've been getting it from us. And the reception has been pretty fantastic. And not just for me, but for you as well, because those people have subsequently purchase some of your letters. And so I was going to read a couple of things they write in because they're very communicative, and they write letters in, they write comments in, they talk to customer service. And so let me just read for a second. Michael J. says, I'm a former subscriber of the Dines letter, and after Mr. Dines' death was passed on to Mr. Hodge and his newsletters, I've been pleased with what I see from Mr. Hodge and his team. Good stuff and straightforward presentation. Another one. Hi, team. I joined you folks with a number of subscriptions last year, moving from the Dines letter. Nick, Gerardo, and your team, you guys are doing a great job. Keep up your great work, and thank you very much. Another one from Bruno. You're doing a fantastic job helping us go forward without Dines. I'm starting to think it'll be a lot more fun and profitable than I dared expect. And then Jack simply says, Mr. Dines would be proud. So
that means a lot.
Trying to carry the torch, right?
Yeah, that means a lot. Meanwhile, on the other side, I couldn't help but laugh. I was going to start this podcast by doing this. Because every now and then I peek at the comments on Bizarro World on the YouTube channel, and somebody said last week, the guy with the white t-shirt talks too much. And I know I'm loud, and I know I read and I ramble about a whole heck of a lot of things, but jokes aside, it made me laugh. I appreciate all the comments, y'all. I thought that would have been a funny intro.
That guy's handle was Rick Full or something like that.
Yeah. It was a cool handle. It was a funny handle. I looked at it too. So shout outs to Rick Full out there.
I mean, what do you listen to a podcast for if not to hear people talk?
I love it. Listen, we can't talk Mr. Dines without bringing up the fact that he was the ultimate contrarian, right? There's two things that really stood out about him to me. One was just how much of a contrarian he was. The second was what comes with that. He was such a visionary. I mean, he saw things sometimes decades before, and he would call this out, right? You could read a book from Mr. Dines from 40 years ago, and he would give you dates 30 years in the future and say, right around this time, you could expect these things to start happening. And sure enough, a lot of those things came to pass, right? And so when I think contrarians, I think Mr. Dines. What's your contrarian speculator self looking at right now that maybe nobody has their eye on? Something that you like that maybe is really under the radar?
I think helium. I don't see a lot of people talking about helium. There's not a lot of ways to invest in helium. In the speculative letter at Hodge Family Office, we're in one of the companies that's going to be the newest producer of helium in North America, and people don't realize how much it's used for. So MRIs, for example, need to be refilled with helium. You can't have fiber optic cables that power the internet without they're produced in an all helium environment. You can't have rocket launches without helium. NASA needs it. SpaceX needs it. Blue Origin needs it. You can't have nuclear fusion without helium. And so it's important for a lot of things. And it's one of those things that flies under the radar. And it's got a pretty long backstory. All the way back to World War II, and then more recently this decade, the U.S. Congress voting to shut down the helium reserve that we had here in the U.S. and selling that off, and then the prices going up. So helium's something I think that not a lot of people look at.
Excellent. Had to ask.
Were you expecting a certain answer?
No, I wasn't. I was genuinely curious, and I just, again, how my brain works. Sometimes I think Mr. Dines, I think contrarian. I think you have your finger on the pulse of so many different sectors where I'm just very resource specific. And I got genuinely curious. I figured, let me ask Mr. Hodge what he thinks is a good contrarian play to ease into right now, right? Something that hasn't caught the market's attention here in a broader sense that may be the perfect time to pivot into in a contrarian way. So, yeah, good stuff.
Okay.
We got to talk about some of the Bizarro, right? Bizarro World stuff that's going on out there. The Cash App founder, Mr. Bob Lee, who was stabbed fatally several weeks ago, there's been an arrest made there. That case has always seemed just super odd to me in the way that it was reported. I mean, this guy was one of the Cash App founders, a big deal that he was stabbed and murdered, visiting friends in San Francisco late at night in a very upscale neighborhood. It seemed out of place. It seemed odd. The lack of media coverage relative to some of the other craziness that goes on that gets covered seemed odd to me as well. And now we find out that the person arrested for the murder is somebody that he actually knew, right? An arrest being made this afternoon. And so They didn't comment on motive, the authorities. They didn't comment on motive, but they said this wasn't a random act. It was obviously something that was targeted. And man, I can't imagine what, someone does to a coworker or a subordinate or a colleague that would motivate, and I don't know if we'll ever know, that would motivate a fatal stabbing of someone in the middle of the street, right, while he's off visiting some friends. Just, horrible case, horrible situation. Am interested in the motive if that ever comes out. It's been odd to me the way the press has covered it, and I just figured I'd bring it up, see if you had any thoughts there. I don't know if you've been following it at all.
I haven't. I saw that it happened. I saw that there was an arrest made, but I didn't know that it was someone he knew. When it first came out, you know how everything gets politicized immediately, right? It immediately turned to San Francisco's on the decline, Democrat-run city, blue city, crime, even in high-end areas, is what, the right was chirping about. But, there's a lot of crime all over the place. Just here in Spokane this week, there was a gentleman who was stabbed on a bridge. There's a river that runs through downtown, and there's a couple of bridges that run over it. And it was a 14 and a 15-year-old that stabbed him like 4 or 5 times. He lived, thank goodness. And it turns out that he was a homeless gentleman. But, there's a lot of crime all over the place. And if you look at the rates, and now I'm going to turn this into a self-serving story, so bear with me for a second.
How about it?
Not a lot of crimes get solved, like less than, I don't want to say them off the top of my head, but we've got a report up that I actually put a link to below this podcast that you can check out, how cops increasingly aren't solving crimes, whether they're violent crimes, assaults and murders, or, rapes or thefts. A lot of times they don't even bother to follow up on things like this house that I'm sitting at.
Or show up.
Well, yeah, that too. We bought last year, and it was broken into. Like somebody kicked the back door in while it was sitting empty, like before it was renovated. And the cops came, and they didn't dust, they didn't do anything. They just said, "Yeah, good luck. Like replace your door and make sure it's locked." And I was like, "Thanks." And then the contractor, when he was renovating, his trailer was broken into. 2 of his trailers actually were broken into. One had like a battery operated lift gate. They like took his batteries and messed up the wiring. And then his storage trailer that he kept all his tools in, they like cut the lock and peeled it back. So there's riffraff all around. But I'll tell you what, since I've been here, there's not been any of that. And I think more specifically, since I put cameras up, and that's where I'm going with this, there hasn't been anything. We got cameras in the back. We got cameras in the front. We got a sign in the front window that says, "Hey, there's certain cameras." Yeah. And that stopped a lot. Well, not a lot. It stopped all of it. And so that's why this is self-serving, because we have a new letter out, a new service called Profit Cycle Pro, that's run by John Borquist and Ryan Stansel. And the idea behind the pub is that it's sort of a digest publishing, right? It takes bits and pieces of my letter, of your letter, of Chris Curl's letters, and amalgamates them into something that people can get a taste of all we do if they want to get familiar with the different services that we provide in the different sectors that we dabble in. And the first one that Profit Cycle Pro is promoting is a private deal that anyone can invest in. So we do a lot of private investing, you and I. But typically those are deals that you got to be accredited to participate in. This is a Reg A deal that is, they've been filed a prospectus. Not a
Reg A deal, a Reg A deal.
Regulation A, that's right. So you don't have to be accredited, I think, as long as you're not putting more than 10% of your net worth into it. And so anyone could participate, but the company is a spin out from another tech company that I was involved in that ultimately was born out of Intel and some technology that they had that allows these closed circuit TVs, these CCTVs, of which there are tens of millions in the country, but nobody ever watches. I mean, no person can watch all those streams, right? So this uses AI, which is obviously popular right now and has been in the past couple of weeks, to watch those cameras and can identify people in them, can identify objects in them, and can notify the authorities when something is happening. And so they tested this in Mexico City, actually, which you're familiar with, and the
Yeah.
area that they tested it in saw like a 45% reduction in crime over
Sure.
the time that they were testing it. So has paid dividends in that respect, and so they're raising a couple of $1 million now, a little bit more than that actually. I think $20 million, and they're looking to scale this out. And they've got some key people running it. A former FBI director, special ops guy,
Yeah.
that's a very serious individual. And anyway, that's one of the first unique investments that Profit Cycle Pro is making available to members of that publication. So it's off to a good start. If you have interest in that, we'll put a link in the description. Sorry to get salesy for a second, but actually didn't even mean to. That was pretty organic. So thanks.
Yeah, no. It's funny. We started talking to Mr. Bob Lee and how unfortunate that was, and I think it was a good segue into crime and solutions and how to reduce that. On that note, I have to say I watched. There's a Apple TV original show with Jon Stewart called The Problem with Jon Stewart. Jon Stewart's someone that I think is brilliant both as a comedian and as a social commentator, and I think his interview style is one of the best that I've seen in quite some time. And he had one on gun control, and I encourage everybody to just kind of take a peek at that episode. I think a lot of you have seen a clip from him interviewing the senator from the state there, and kind of
Oklahoma,
going back.
I think it was.
You got it, from Oklahoma, state senator from Oklahoma, who like us is very pro Second Amendment, though unlike us, kind of failed on some of the accountability fronts. And I think Stewart did a great job holding his feet to the fire on that. And I bring that up because I saw this settlement earlier this week that, again, just upset the living heck out of me, man. It's one thing when adults choose to drink or smoke or do drugs or, engage in behavior that's detrimental to their individual health. However, they're making, consensual decisions to do so, and you pay the consequence for your decisions, right? That's the way accountability is supposed to work. It's a very different thing when a company like Juul, Juul, knowingly targets junior high and high school children with sweetly scented and flavored nicotine pens, essentially, right? And runs entire marketing campaigns and makes billions of dollars hooking these kids to these nicotine pens, and then is able to just pay, this week's settlement was $462 million to 6 states. The largest e-cigarette settlement ever so far. The profits were much more than the settlement. No criminal convictions. Nobody's going to prison. The kids will stay addicted for the most part. And again, it's just the failure of accountability, the lack of accountability is a part of what we could do so much better in this country, right? And so, again, my brain works in different ways. I saw that, I thought about that, and this is kind of where it led me.
Well, it's a toll road. If they really were concerned for your health, kids or otherwise, they would ban cigarettes and vaping, the government I'm talking about. But they don't, because they need, want, and like the revenue that the tobacco companies provide them. And so you'll remember in the late 90s or early 2000s, there was, massive settlements and cases going on. And basically it was an organized way of saying, look, this is what we're going to do. You guys are going to reorganize. Philip Morris is going to go bye-bye. You're called Altria now, which not a lot of people know is a tobacco company. If you see Altria, their pretty logo, right? We're going to make it a quasi-monopoly, an oligopoly. There's like British Tobacco and Altria. And you guys are going to be the only ones who are allowed to sell this stuff. And that's how we're going to keep it. And you're going to pay us large amounts of taxes. It's the reason that cigarettes are still legal, despite all the carcinogens and cancer and other health detriments that they cause. And it's why no new entrants are allowed into the market. When's the last time you saw a new brand of cigarettes that weren't owned by one of those companies? Conversely, and perhaps perversely, they're great investments. I'm a shareholder in Altria. The dividends, I believe, currently are 7 or 8% per year. And they have a moat that is provided by that government who doesn't care enough about you to ban them entirely, only cares enough about their revenue streams to organize a deal that keeps the taxes coming.
Sick world out
that's
there.
my take.
Yeah, sick world. We need some term limits, y'all. We need to get the lobbyists and the money out of politics. Do you have good news on that front, Nick?
Another good transition.
Man.
And to bring up the fourth turning again, even the Democrats are turning on Miss Dianne Feinstein now, asking her to step down. Right, she's missing votes that are causing things to
important ones too.
Yeah, because she's on the Judiciary Committee in the Senate. She's also selling homes for like $35 million. Like she sold her Aspen ski house for $35 million. Those senators make like $200,000 a year, man.
They're great investors.
Exactly.
They should write a newsletter.
Clarence Thomas sold a house to that gentleman too, the guy that he was going on the plane with. I don't know if you saw that. Sold him a house and didn't disclose it. So anyway, that's your government. Then executive, legislative, and judicial.
That's your government. Listen, I want to bring it back to markets before we go. Copper is heating up. I always say, do as the money does, not as the narrative says, right? And there's been a lot of money put on the table for copper producers lately. I mean, today the newest one is Hudbay's buying Copper Mountain for $439 million, right? Not a huge premium. I think like an 18 to 19% premium to its last close. But, this comes on the heels of Glencore making an unsolicited $22.5 billion bid for copper miner Teck Resources, which, of course, mines by default a lot of zinc as well. But it's interesting to me that much like the lithium world, in the copper space, there are billions and billions of dollars looking for fresh supply, new supply, a re-upping of reserves for what's coming. And what's coming, folks, is much, much higher copper prices. If we can be at $4.10 a pound in a bear market with China lockdown and a recession here in the U.S., boy, when it gets hot and China opens up all the way again and starts pumping, dollars into its economy, as we know it's going to do, and the U.S. pivots, which it will do eventually, I see a very, very bright future for copper, and it would do y'all well to start double-checking the list. The way we started saying about gold, when gold, went below that, $1,800 level, and we said it's either breaking down to 15 or it's going to hold it and bounce, and if it holds it and bounce, and it's going to step ladder all the way up to new all-time highs. That seems well on its way. Silver followed that, and now I think I think copper is going to have, maybe not in the next quarter, but the next couple of quarters should be robust ones for the copper space. So that's what I'm looking for here in the next week or so. And of course, results from Patriot Battery Metals, which had an excellent technical release this past week, which basically told the market one of two things: we can build this, and we're going to do everything that we need to do to get an order. Right? We're going to get maiden resource estimate, pre-feasibility study, hydrological work. We're going to get all the baseline studies needed. We're building an 80-man camp. We're adding a road. We're doing all the things that we need to build this if we want to build this on our own in a couple of years. Or we're doing all the things that we need to do to hand it off to the person that's going to pay us nothing less than $50 a share. For those of you that read between the lines, that's what that release was about. The next one, I think, is going to be about more outstanding results. So I'll be looking for that next week as well.
Good. I don't have a lot to add there. I think you're spot on with copper. It being the time to buy over the coming months before we get into Q3 and Q4. The Oz Minerals takeover was approved. Turquoise Hill has gone bye-bye. Not a lot of quality copper assets out there. Filo's got a $3 billion valuation. I was looking today.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah, I'm going to give y'all a freebie, and it's only a freebie because it's already in the letter, and I just upped my buy under price. All of the subscribers that pay us for this advice have already been able to act on it. Y'all want to look at a great lithium play that I think is the next James Bay success story. I think it's going to be Q2 Metals. It's had quite a nice pullback. There was a 10-cent financing that came free trading here recently. It's coming free trading, and it's pulled back from a high of over $1 to like 54 cents earlier today. I suspect that by the June-July timeline, that stock will be closer to triple digits than the 50-cent mark. I think this entry point, anything below 60 cents, is an excellent entry point. do your due diligence. It's 8 kilometers of lithium spodumene bearing pegmatites in James Bay. It's got the right geology. It's got the right rocks. It's it's got a program overseen by the VP of Exploration, Neil McCallum, who happened to be the gentleman that staked the Corvette district for Patriot Battery Metals. Darren Smith is a part of the DeRouge Group, DeRouge Geological Consulting. That's the group Neil McCallum works with. And also Darren Smith happens to be the VP of Exploration and lead geologist for Patriot Battery Metals. So they know the two projects intimately. The teams are very familiar with each other. A lot of synergies there. I hate that word, but it's the right one for this situation. And I think you can do yourself a service by digging into Q2 metals. So that's your lithium play for the week. Free one.
It's not me that's selling. They should have found some stronger heads. We were asking for more.
Q2 metals. I'm only saying this on the podcast because I know y'all listen, because I said it to you privately. Jason, you were supposed to relay this message to Mr. Kevin, but I did say this is why when we asked for more, you should have given us more, because we haven't even filed the forms yet. Yeah, we haven't even filed the forms yet to clean up the shares. We're long-term sticky shareholders. I think this is a $3 to $5 play in the next 12 months. It's got that kind of potential if Mother Nature left behind what I suspect it left behind. So yeah, the next time you raise some capital, I'm probably ready to check at a higher price. Hopefully we can get a little bit more. We're thankful for what we got, both on the 10-cent and the 50-cent financing. And just to be clear, folks, we wrote checks at the 50-cent financing here recently. We wrote a 10-cent check prior to that. I would love to write a $1.25 check here in the next 6 months after some success with the drill bit here in Q3. And, watch it go to $3 to $5 where I think it can head if it has some success and the lithium space keeps doing what I think it will do. So that's it. That's a freebie. You get your money's worth, folks.
Like it.
I like it. I'm supposed to remind you every week to go to dailyprofitcycle.com/subscribe to be able to get all the alerts in your inbox. You can listen to this podcast. You can leave us a comment and we can laugh at the comments. And also, anytime you guys have any questions, we're happy to entertain those, get those on here and answer them to the best of our ability. This was the 214th, holy smokes, the 214th episode of our weekly therapy session that we call Investing in Bizarro World. I am Gerardo Del Real along with Mr. Nick Hodge. Nick, send us off, sir.
19 of the 500 S&P companies have reported earnings, and earnings growth is only down 25%. Enjoy the next ones that come out.
Down is the new up. Less inflation is no inflation. It's a Bizarro World, folks. Have a good one. Be kind to each other out there.
Hey there, you independent-minded investor. If you like this video, make sure to tell us so by clicking the like button below. Subscribe to our channel so you never miss another one. And share it with everyone you know on social media. You can also click the link in the description below to check out more information-packed videos just like this one. Thanks for watching.